It wasn't the first lie ever told before the United States Senate, and it certainly won't be the last. But what Attorney General Pam Bondi said before the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee this afternoon may very well go down as one of the most brazen, most shameless, most verifiably false statements ever uttered in that setting. Quote, "The two-tiered system of justice is over." In fact, if Bondi's on-the-record testimony today served to prove anything out in public, anything at all, it is that a two-tiered system of justice has very much been operationalized, is the new reality in the United States of America right now. Just ask former FBI Director Jim Comey, whose recent federal indictment, initiated mere days after a public pressure campaign, was a frequent topic of inquiry this afternoon. Again and again and again, Bondi refused to answer questions on the matter. Questions about.
All right, so I need everyone to pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you because this story is absolutely explosive and it's not getting nearly enough coverage in the mainstream media right now. A federal judge has just ordered Attorney General Pam Bondi to testify under oath about accusations that she improperly removed or withheld critical documents related to the DOJ investigation into connections between President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. And yeah, you heard that correctly. The Attorney General of the United States is being called to explain herself in court over allegations of a potential cover-up involving some of the most sensitive documents in recent American history. This is not something that happens every day. This is not normal, and the implications here are absolutely staggering. This is not a drill. This is happening right now. On November 25th, 2025, just days ago, Judge Tanya Chutkan issued an order demanding expedited legal hearings into how the Justice Department has been handling Freedom of Information Act requests related to internal records on the Epstein files. The judge wants to know whether Bondi misled the public about what's actually in these documents and why certain information appears to have been delayed or concealed from release. She's not asking politely, she's demanding answers. And let me tell you, the accusations flying around right now are absolutely wild, and they have serious implications for how our government operates. A lawsuit filed by Democracy Forward, a government watchdog group, alleges that Bondi reversed course on document disclosure after learning that Trump's name appeared in the files. Think about that for a second. Really let that sink in. The Attorney General allegedly changed her position on releasing documents specifically because the president's name showed up in them. If that's true, and we don't know for certain yet, but if that's true, we're talking about one of the most blatant examples of political interference in Justice Department operations that we've ever seen in modern American history. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Senator, first, that's pending litigation, and I can't discuss that at all. The 21 is pending litigation. I cannot discuss that.
In Florida?
But if I could go back
I really
the
didn't know
21
this.
age is pending litigation. I can't discuss that. But Senator, back to what you said about what happened in Minnesota, there is no place for that. And I believe I spoke to you after that. Horrific, those murders. And I'm so sorry that happened. And all of my federal agencies were partnering with state agencies, working hand in hand in Minnesota. What I can tell you about the Second Amendment is this is the most pro-Second Amendment DOJ in American history, as you know. But we want to keep guns, as you said, where they should be, in the hands of law-abiding American citizens, while keeping them.
And here's where it gets even crazier. Bondi has publicly thanked President Trump for directing probes into Epstein's ties with prominent Democrats. She literally went on social media and thanked the president for ordering investigations into his political opponents. Come on, are you kidding me? The Attorney General is supposed to be independent. The whole point of having a Justice Department separate from the White House is so that law enforcement decisions aren't made based on political considerations. But Bondi is out here thanking Trump for telling her who to investigate. That's not how any of this is supposed to work. That's the opposite of how it's supposed to work. Now look, I know there are people watching this who are going to say that the Epstein files needed to be released no matter what, and I agree with that completely. Transparency is important, The public deserves to know what happened and who was involved in Epstein's crimes. Every single person who participated in those horrific acts should be exposed and held accountable. But there's a huge difference between pursuing transparency and using the Justice Department as a political weapon to protect yourself while attacking your enemies. And right now, the evidence suggests that's exactly what's happening here. The Epstein Files Transparency Act was passed after Trump pressured Congress to make it happen. Bondi then filed motions to release grand jury transcripts, which sounds great on the surface. But she also admitted in social media posts that she had the files on her desk. She's been sitting on this stuff. And according to the lawsuit, she only started getting squirrely about disclosure when Trump's name came up in the documents. That's not transparency. That's selective transparency designed to protect the powerful while exposing everyone else. That's using the machinery of government to shield your boss while destroying his opponents. And now a federal judge has said, enough. We need answers. Bondi needs to testify and explain exactly what's going on inside the DOJ. Why were documents delayed? Why did the department reverse course? What is being hidden and who made the decision to hide it? These are the questions that Judge Chutkan wants answered. And frankly, these are the questions that every American should want answered regardless of their political affiliation or who they voted for. Okay, so let's really dig into what's happening here because there's a lot of context that most people are missing, and the mainstream media is doing a terrible job of explaining why this matters so much. To understand this story, you need to understand how we got here. And that means going back to the Epstein saga and how it's intersected with Trump administration politics in ways that are frankly unprecedented in American history. This isn't just about one set of documents or one investigation. This is about the fundamental question of whether the Justice Department serves the law or serves the president. Jeffrey Epstein, as most of you probably know, was a wealthy financier who was convicted of sex trafficking and died in federal custody under circumstances that remain controversial to this day. Before his death, Epstein had connections to numerous powerful people across politics and business and entertainment. His black book and flight logs became the subject of intense public interest because people wanted to know who else was involved in his criminal enterprise and whether powerful figures had been protected from accountability. The questions surrounding his death and his connections have never been fully answered, and the public has been demanding transparency for years. Now here's where Trump enters the picture. Trump and Epstein were photographed together multiple times over the years. They moved in similar social circles in New York and Florida. Trump even made comments about Epstein years ago, acknowledging that they knew each other and that Epstein liked young women. So when the Epstein files became a political issue, Trump's name was inevitably going to come up. That's just a fact. There's no way to investigate Epstein's connections thoroughly without Trump's name appearing somewhere in those documents. But the question is, how do you handle that when you're the president and your attorney general is supposed to be independent? What appears to have happened, according to the lawsuit and the concerns raised by the judge, is that Bondi started out saying she would release documents and be transparent about everything. Great. That's what the public wanted. That's what transparency advocates had been demanding for years. But then something changed. According to Democracy Forward, Bondi reversed course after learning that Trump's name appeared in the files. Suddenly, the timeline got pushed back. Suddenly, there were more redactions than originally planned. Suddenly, the DOJ became much more cautious about what would actually be released to the public. The whole approach shifted in a way that conveniently protected the president. And this is where the allegations of a cover-up come from. Because if Bondi changed her approach specifically to protect the president, that's not just a scandal. That's a potential obstruction of justice. That's using the power of the Attorney General's office to shield the president from public scrutiny while simultaneously using that same office to attack his political enemies. And that's exactly the kind of thing that the separation between the DOJ and the White House is supposed to prevent. The whole system is designed to stop this from happening, and it appears to be failing completely. But wait, it gets even more complicated. Because while Bondi was allegedly protecting Trump, she was also going full speed ahead on investigating Democrats connected to Epstein. She publicly thanked Trump for directing probes into Epstein's ties with prominent Democrats. Think about the message that sends. We're going to investigate my boss's political enemies aggressively and without hesitation. But when it comes to documents that might involve my boss, we're going to slow walk everything and be super careful about what gets released. That's a two-tiered system of justice that should outrage everyone regardless of party. That's not equal justice under law. That's weaponization of the Justice Department. And multiple former DOJ officials have come out and said they've never seen anything like this before in their careers. The Attorney General is supposed to make decisions based on the law and the facts, not based on what's politically convenient for the president. But Bondi seems to be doing exactly the opposite. She seems to see her job as serving Trump's interests rather than serving the American people. Now let's talk about Judge Chutkan for a second, because she's a significant figure in all of this, and understanding who she is helps explain why this order matters so much. Chutkan is the same federal judge who has handled other major cases involving Trump and his associates. She has a reputation for being thorough and not backing down from powerful defendants. She doesn't care who you are or how much power you have. She expects you to follow the law and answer for your conduct. And the fact that she's now ordering expedited hearings into the DOJ's conduct tells you that she sees something seriously wrong with how this has been handled. The specific focus of the hearing is on how the DOJ processed Freedom of Information Act requests related to the Epstein files. FOIA is supposed to be a tool for transparency, a way for journalists and researchers and regular citizens to get access to government documents that should be public. But agencies sometimes drag their feet on FOIA requests or redact more than necessary to avoid embarrassment or political damage. What's being alleged here is that the DOJ under Bondi has been using FOIA delays and excessive redactions specifically to protect Trump while expediting releases that damage Democrats. That's not how FOIA is supposed to work. That's corruption. And here's the thing that really gets me. Bondi has been so blatant about all of this. She's not even trying to hide the political nature of what she's doing. She literally posted on social media thanking Trump for the Epstein investigation directives. She's talked publicly about having the files on her desk for weeks. She's made it clear that she sees her job as carrying out the president's wishes rather than independently pursuing justice. And now she's going to have to explain all of that under oath in front of a federal judge who is not going to accept vague answers or political spin. The lawsuit from Democracy Forward lays out the timeline pretty clearly, and it's damning. Bondi initially committed to releasing documents and being transparent about the whole process. Then Trump's name came up in the files. Then suddenly everything changed. The disclosure was reversed. The timeline was pushed back. The approach became much more cautious. And all of this happened while Bondi was simultaneously thanking Trump for directing her to investigate Democrats. If you can look at that pattern and not see political interference, I don't know what to tell you. The evidence is right there in plain sight. And this matters beyond just the Epstein files, because what's happening here sets a precedent for how the Justice Department operates going forward. If the Attorney General can selectively release documents to protect the president while aggressively pursuing his enemies, then we don't really have an independent Justice Department anymore. We have a political tool that serves whoever is in power. And that's dangerous no matter which party is in control, because eventually the other party will be in charge and they'll use the same playbook. Okay, so let's break this down into what really matters and what comes next. Because there's a lot happening here and it's easy to get lost in the details. I want to give you the key takeaways that you need to understand about this story and why it's going to have major implications for American politics and the rule of law going forward. These are the things you need to remember when you're talking about this with friends and family and trying to explain why this matters so much. First point, and this is the most important one, DOJ independence is effectively dead under this administration. That's not me being hyperbolic or dramatic. That's what the evidence shows. When the Attorney General publicly thanks the president for directing investigations into political opponents, that's not independence. When document releases are allegedly modified based on whether they help or hurt the president, that's not independence. When the AG has to be ordered by a federal judge to explain her conduct under oath, that's not what a functioning independent Justice Department looks like. We've crossed a line here that previous administrations at least pretended to respect, even when they were pushing boundaries. The separation between the White House and DOJ was always somewhat porous. Every administration has tried to influence the Justice Department to some degree. But what's happening now is something fundamentally different. It's open and blatant politicization of law enforcement at the highest levels. Bondi isn't even pretending to be independent. She's thanking Trump publicly for telling her who to investigate. That's not a gray area. That's not a subtle violation of norms. That's a complete abandonment of the principle that justice should be blind and equal for everyone. Second point, the Epstein files are being used as a political weapon rather than a pursuit of justice, and this should make everyone uncomfortable regardless of their political views. The whole point of investigating Epstein's crimes and his connections should be to uncover the truth and hold people accountable. All people, not just the ones who happen to be politically inconvenient for the current administration. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening is that the files are being selectively released to damage Democrats, while information that might involve Trump is being delayed or suppressed. That's not justice. That's political warfare dressed up as transparency, and it cheapens the legitimate goal of accountability for everyone who was involved in Epstein's crimes. The victims of Epstein deserve better than having their cases turned into political ammunition. They deserve a genuine pursuit of truth that doesn't care about party affiliation or who's in the White House. What they're getting instead is a partisan circus where the powerful protect each other while pretending to seek justice. Third point, Judge Chutkan's order is a big deal, and it signals that the courts are not going to just rubber stamp whatever the DOJ does. Chutkan has ordered expedited hearings, which means she wants answers quickly, and she's not going to let this drag out for months or years. She's demanding testimony from the Attorney General herself, not some lower-level official who can claim ignorance or hide behind bureaucratic excuses. She wants Bondi to explain what happened with these documents and why the department's approach changed when Trump's name came up. This is the judicial branch stepping in to check executive overreach, which is exactly what the courts are supposed to do in our system of government, but it also shows how serious the allegations are. Federal judges don't haul attorneys general into court unless they see real evidence of potential misconduct. Chutkan wouldn't be doing this if she thought the allegations were frivolous or politically motivated. She sees something wrong and she wants answers. That should concern everyone who cares about the rule of law. Fourth point, this story is going to get bigger before it gets smaller. The hearing that Chutkan ordered is just the beginning of what could be a much larger scandal. Depending on what comes out in Bondi's testimony, there could be additional investigations and additional legal consequences and additional political fallout that we can't even predict right now. If Bondi lies under oath, that's perjury. If documents were deliberately concealed to protect the president, that could be obstruction of justice. If the DOJ systematically treated FOIA requests differently based on political considerations, that could trigger congressional oversight and potentially even impeachment discussions. Now let's talk about what this means for the broader political landscape, because we're heading into 2026, and everything that happens now is going to shape the midterm elections and the future of American governance. The accusations against Bondi play into a narrative that Democrats have been pushing for months, that the Trump administration is using the Justice Department to reward friends and punish enemies. This story gives that narrative concrete evidence to point to. It's no longer just speculation or partisan attacks. There's a federal lawsuit and a federal judge demanding answers. But here's the flip side. Trump supporters are going to see this completely differently. They're going to argue that Judge Chutkan is biased. She's handled Trump cases before, and they'll claim she has an agenda against him. They're going to say that Democracy Forward is a liberal activist group trying to undermine the administration with baseless accusations. They're going to argue that the real story is Epstein's ties to Democrats, and that any focus on Trump is just a distraction from the real criminals. And this is the problem with our current political environment. The same set of facts gets interpreted in completely opposite ways depending on which side you're on. What I would say to anyone watching, regardless of your political views, is that the principle here matters more than the partisan implications. If a Democratic Attorney General was accused of suppressing documents to protect a Democratic president, that would be equally wrong. The Justice Department needs to be independent regardless of who is in power. The rule of law needs to apply equally to everyone from the president down to the average citizen. And when there are credible allegations that those principles are being violated, we should all want answers. That's not a partisan position. That's a basic requirement for a functioning democracy. The next few weeks are going to be critical. Bondi is going to have to testify under oath. Documents are going to have to be produced for the court's review. The judge is going to have to evaluate whether the DOJ's conduct was appropriate or whether there was deliberate concealment for political purposes. And whatever comes out of those proceedings is going to shape how we understand this administration and the state of American justice for years to come. So that's where we are right now. A federal judge has ordered the Attorney General to explain herself under oath. Accusations of a cover-up are swirling around one of the most sensitive investigations in recent memory. The independence of the Justice Department is being questioned like never before, and we're all just waiting to see what happens next. Stay tuned because this story is far from over. We're going to be covering every development as it happens. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. Do you believe Bondi was protecting Trump? Do you think the judge is overreaching? I want to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one.